With nowhere else to store it, Japan may dump more than 1 million tons of radioactive water into the ocean. The operator of the ruined Fukushima nuclear plant said there's going to be no more space for the contaminated water that's accumulated since 2011, when an earthquake and a tsunami set off meltdowns at the plant. Joining us for more is Gordon Edwards, president of the Canadian Coalition for Nuclear Responsibility. Gordon, thank you so much for being here. Let's jump right in. The Japanese government says that a final decision has not been made yet, but some scientists are pumping the brakes on concerns, saying that the water would be diluted quickly in the vastness of the Pacific Ocean. What's your take on that?
Well, the point is that radioactivity doesn't disappear. It actually gets absorbed into the ocean water and into the fish and the seafood that lives there, and ultimately into human beings who eat the fish. This is why the local fishermen are very concerned and have opposed this for many years. They've tried to do this for several years, to dump the water into the Pacific Ocean, and the fishermen have said no. Even now, we only have about 15% of the sales of fish from the region that they previously had before the accident. And the South Korean government is saying something similar. They're saying, we're afraid that our fishery is going to be contaminated. So this stuff doesn't go away. Biological organisms reconcentrate radioactive materials.
Since 2011, 1,000 storage tanks have been used to accumulate 1.1 million tons of water. You say in the next 4 to 5 years, there's going to be another 730,000 tons of contaminated water. Where is all the radioactive water coming from? Why is it growing so fast?
That's a very important question. It's important to understand, first of all, that when you have any nuclear reactor, the used fuel is 1 million times more radioactive than the fresh fuel. And the reason why is because there's hundreds of newly created radioactive materials right in the used fuel. That's the stuff that comes out into the environment during a nuclear accident. And that stuff is still there. It's buried under the ground where the reactor cores have melted down. But you can't just put those cores, you can't ignore them. You have to continue to cool them because they continue to generate heat. In fact, they generate so much heat that they melted the cores in the first place. It's only the radioactive waste that melted the cores of those reactors. So they have to keep on cooling that used fuel for years afterwards. Here in Canada, we take our used fuel and we put it in pools of water that circulate in order to cool it for 10 years before we can take it out of those pools. Now, you don't have pools of water underground. So what TEPCO, the company, has been doing is pumping water down into the underground melted cores to kind of keep them cool, and then pumping that stuff back up to the surface again. Otherwise, it'll go into the Pacific Ocean. And they've been storing it in tanks, and that's why every week or so, they add more tanks. It takes about 7 days to fill one of these tanks. Some of these tanks are about 10 meters high and hold up to 1,000 to 1,200 tons of contaminated water. Now, they have filters that they run through an elaborate process to screen out a lot of the radionuclides, but there's one radionuclide, radioactive material, they can't get out, and that's called tritium. Tritium is radioactive hydrogen, and what that means is that the radioactive water molecules themselves become radioactive. The hydrogen in water gets replaced by radioactive hydrogen. And you can't filter this out because you can't filter water from water. And radioactive water molecules are the same as non-radioactive, except that one of them is radioactive and the other isn't.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Gordon, thank you for laying this out for us and explaining it to us in a way that a person like myself can understand. We appreciate it.